This video is about the 2011 action RPG Bastion. It's also about me, my life, specifically what I've experienced the past few weeks as of writing. So, spoilers for the entire game. It's pretty short. Also, spoilers for my life, too. I hope it's not that short. Bastion, for those of you who don't know, is the first game developed by Supergiant Games, the very same studio that would come into prominence in the indie sphere with their 2020 roguelike Hades. And for those of you who've played Hades, Bastion may seem somewhat familiar, as it too features isometric action gameplay, which contains levels that have a single plane which spreads over a long area filled with endearing enemy designs. It's an RPG with a pretty smooth and competent combat system. You play as the kid, or at least that's what the narrator calls him, as he ventures through the decrepit remains of a once great city named Caelondia that succumbed to an ambiguous calamity that they call the Calamity. Speaking of the narrator, there exists a non-stop hyper-reactive deep voice that narrates your every action and provides context to what you are doing.
Ground forms up under his feet as it pointing the way. He don't stop to wonder why.
This is important because you literally wake up on a platform that's floating in what seems like a void. As you approach the edge, tiles fly up to form a pathway ahead of you. And the narrator acknowledges this, tells us that this is the aftermath of a calamity. Everything is in ruins. There are no other people left, and there seems to be feral creatures that attack you on sight. Windbags, squirts, scumbags, and these mechanical dragon heads that shoot you. The kid is given a large hammer, and following the narrator, you make your way through the outskirts of Caelondia. Immediately, other than the constant hostility of the place, what you notice is how destroyed it is. The tiles which form in front of you don't hold well for too long. They too start to fall away just as they came. There are no people, but there are these weird statues. When you go near them, the narrator tells you their names.
Inside's old Rondi, the bartender. The Calamity got him before his drinking did.
There are no statues. They were once people, now lifeless and rigid, waiting to meet the head of the kid's hammer. Your path leads you to a shiny crystal. The narrator urges you to take it, and eventually you end up somewhere new, somewhere green and vibrant. You meet an old man there, a stranger. The narrator reveals that this stranger is none other than himself.
Sure enough, he finds another. He finds me.
He points to a broken structure in the middle of this green floating island you both have found yourself in. You insert the shiny crystal you found, what he calls the core, and before your very eyes, the island starts to expand and build structures around itself. This island is the eponymous Bastion, a structure that, according to the narrator, is the final hope for Caelondia, an opportunity to rebuild the once great city. Rux is the name of the narrator. He was a Caelondian. The Bastion is his creation. He puts the kid on a mission to wander through different parts of Caelondia in search of these cores. As we saw ourselves, these cores have some kind of power to rebuild what was broken. This is what the city needs. This is the game. To rebuild. As a child, I've always been introverted and shy, often spending most of my time on the internet or playing video games and watching stupid YouTube creepypasta videos. But I've never really found it difficult to make friends. There's always been that one person that comes up to me and we would hit it off. For most of my lower primary school, I had a group of 3 friends. We'd talk all the time during class, and if you've gone to school in India circa 2012, 2015, you've You know how the teachers can be. Talking during class is the ultimate sin. They'd come over with a little stick and hit us on our palms. Never too hard, just enough for it to sting for a little bit. Of course, this never worked. Everyone talked, me included. Me and my buddies would talk about watching English movies on cable television. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy was one of our favorite topics to discuss. At the beginning of higher primary or elementary school, we got split up and I got into a class with totally new students. I had a bit of trouble finding friends, but eventually I fell right into a sizable group of boys. We'd roleplay being Power Rangers, we'd play imaginary Pokemon battles, we'd discuss all the cool science stuff we found online, like the butterfly effect or the Schrodinger's cat paradox thing. We'd also have imaginary Harry Potter duels. Fuck J.K. Rowling. We'd play football. Approaching my early teens, things kind of changed. You see, India is a big country with a lot of people. It is also quite a socially conservative and hyper-religious place. Being an atheist, or even left-leaning for that matter, isn't something you'd really see a lot around here. My parents, and even most of my extended family, were like that, though. In our school diaries, which were these little books that were used to note down school events, there was a section which asked for the religion and caste of the person to whom it belonged to. My parents always answered with nil or none. I was not brought up in a religious household, and I guess I was privileged enough to never really know my own caste, to never have it be something I have to hide or cling to for welfare. And my parents were pretty much staunch leftists. Naturally, I followed suit. I began to think in terms that didn't quite agree with what most people here think. I was bullied quite a lot for not believing in God. To be fair, I was pretty much an insufferable Reddit atheist back then, always ready to take up fights of logic with religious people. I was also quite aware of sex and sexuality and the problems that were evident in society very early on, and would communicate it to my friends. In middle school, for these reasons and much more, I was almost publicly ousted from our friend group. They never gave a solid reason. I remember being told it's because I was insufferable with my atheism. I was also told it was because I talked about things that shouldn't be talked about. At the end of that academic year, I had no friends left, and at the end of the year, the pandemic hit, and by the end of the next year, our family moved houses, leaving behind all my friends at home. Everything I knew, every conception I had of myself, all the terms with which I had learned to describe myself and the world around me pretty much shattered before my eyes. This was also around the time when I was going through puberty. I don't think I have to tell you how that is. It's confusing and frustrating, all the changes, the hormones. I hated myself. I hated the person I was because that was a person who was abandoned. And if I was abandoned, then something must have been wrong with me. Maybe I deserved to have my world shatter. Maybe if I rebuild it to something new, it'll be okay again. Maybe I can go back to being nerdy and having a small group of friends who do imaginary Pokemon battles again. That's what I needed to rebuild. Through the Skyway, the kid travels to numerous different places of the once great Ceylondia. The narrator speaks of the city with a sort of awe in his voice. Quote, "The city was the most beautiful place in the world. We all knew that. But now, as mentioned earlier, what remains is a complete rundown group of floating tiles and islands with pieces falling out as a kid runs past them. It's very easy to roll off into the void. It's very easy to be confused as to what is happening on screen, as enemies often spawn in large swaths. You come across different weapons, a machete that's throwable, a bow, a musket, a pair of pistols, and so on. You take them and use them against the wildlife that stands between you and the course. Much of these expeditions to find these cores are short, acute, and to the point. They are fun. Not much is added in as to what exactly happened to the city by the narrator, all until we reach the Hanging Garden, filled with more of the ashen statues of the long gone. At the heart of the place, however, there is a figure which stands. Not a statue, though. No, although he looks petrified, this one's alive. The kid meets Zulf, a man who's lost his loved ones in the Calamity, a gentlemanly face. He brings him to the Bastion. Similarly, in another expedition, this time to Prosper Bluff, the kid encounters another sign of life amongst all this death. This time, not a sight, but a sound, a sweet voice of a woman singing. He follows her voice and finds Zia, a calm and pleasant soul at the heart of unpleasant ruination. Bringing her back to the Bastion, we find the place starting to come to life. It's not just the old man and the kid anymore, but now there are a total of 4 people and many wildlife animals that have been tamed. Maybe a way back is possible. At the end of 10th grade, much after the pandemic simmered down, I decided to apply for a new school. I've studied under this one school for all my life, but seeing where it led me, I desperately wanted a clean slate. Much of the self-loathing died down as I started to make video essays in my free time. I found online communities which felt more relatable to me than any IRL groups ever had, and I made close friends from these communities. In fact, I grew pretty close to a person in a similar community as mine. We bonded over mutual appreciation for media. We'd discuss anime and video games for hours on end. In person, however, I still found it pretty difficult to make friends. I believed that I'd end up making at least a friend somehow because that's how it was when I was a child. But that was no longer the case. I had to push myself a bit to open up to people, something I wouldn't do until the latter half of the 11th grade or even till the beginning of the last year of my high school. I did end up making some close acquaintances, one of whom I developed feelings for. This was quite hard for me to handle because I still hated myself. I felt gross and embarrassed for having feelings for a girl. I felt like I was doing something bad to her. Thankfully, the online friend seemed to relate to my situation, and we discussed this on and off. They tell me about their experience in school as I would mine at the end of most school days. It was a fun time. I finally started to think that maybe I do deserve to have these good feelings after all. Maybe I do deserve to strive to make friends. And so I did. The last year of high school, I opened up more than ever before. I made good friends with the girl I had a crush on. I befriended most of the people in my class, and by the latter half of the year, I became very close friends with one of my other classmates. She seemed similar to me in the sense that she was into more niche aspects of culture. She was a raging atheist, which I guess reminded me of myself. We text for hours a night about the randomest shit. David Bowie x Mick Jagger, stupid old slasher flicks. She was into horror. I told her about me having a crush on our classmate, and she told me about having a crush on another one of our classmates. This was the first time I've ever expressed my romantic feelings about someone to any other person besides my online friend. It was a first for me. At some point, I confessed to my crush, and she did not reciprocate. Both my online friend and my IRL friend helped me through the impending heartbreak. Regardless of the outcome, I felt somewhat fulfilled. I confessed to the person I have feelings for directly. I have a few close friends whom I trust. I no longer hate any of this. By the time exams rolled around, we'd get almost 3 months of total break time. Me, my IRL friend, who was practically my best friend by that point, and a few of our other friends would go to school to study together every day. Obviously, only a little studying ever really happened. We'd talk for hours as usual. At some point, our focus shifted to my best friend's love life. I urged her to confess. After all, she and I were on the same boat, and now I'm only in a better place after confessing, so fuck it. At some point, she did. He reciprocated. I played a major role in getting my best friend a boyfriend. I even gained some friends in the process. After finals, I kept in touch with my friends. We made plans to hang out, and we did. For most of April, we hung out, played badminton and cards, roamed malls, went to cafes, and so on. We saw the new Final Destination movie. It fucking sucked. We went to restaurants and ordered stuff that we couldn't finish and had to carry home the rest out of embarrassment. One of my videos took off and got me quite a lot of views. It was looking lively again. Maybe a way back is possible. It takes about half the game, that's about 2 hours, but the kid finally ends up obtaining the final core. The Bastion can be completed now, and according to Rux, this means that Caelondia could be restored to its former glory. With the core in hand, the kid returns to the Bastion, only to find it in total ruins. Zulf had suddenly gone rogue and turned on us, says Rux, the narrator. You see, Zia brought a handwritten journal with her, which was in the language spoken by the Ura. Zulf is originally an Ura, so Zia only ethnically being brought up in Caelondia. The Ura were the original inhabitants of the place where Caelondia was eventually founded. After a great war, the Ura surrendered, adopting peaceful cooperation with the Caelondians who started to build the city there. The narrator does not specify why Zulf left, only that he did after reading whatever was in that journal, and that he left a path of destruction behind him. All that was rebuilt now lay in ruins again. But regardless, Rux is optimistic. If it was built, it could be rebuilt, he says. After using up the core which the kid brought, he sends the kid to find shards. These are similar crystals to the cores, only much weaker. But there are plenty to rebuild the Bastion, he says. And so, back to the Skyway, back to wandering in even more unfamiliar, even more decrepit lands of the former glory of Caelondia. More weapons, more wildlife, more danger. We get a shard, we rebuild. We get another, we rebuild again. But eventually, like in the first cycle of the kid gathering the cores, the kid encounters a sign of life again. It's Zulf again. He's not hostile. He gives the kid a letter that's supposed to be delivered to Zia and asks him to quit his search for shards. We don't know what his motivations are, so we keep going. He warns us that if we don't stop, his countrymen will make us stop. Back at the Bastion, it's an all-out ambush. Everything is in shambles, even worse than the first time. Zia is missing. Rux is barely holding on. The wildlife is fighting back, but slowly losing ground. You fight off the Ura warriors, leaving behind yet another site of pure destruction. This is the worst the Bastion has ever been. But the narrator remains ever so solid in his optimism. One more shard and we can go back, he says. But the final shard is in the hands of the Ura, and they obviously are not gonna give it to us. And Zia is missing. All the wildlife is gone. You're the kid. What else can you do? You look for the final shard. You find it at Jawson Bog, but the natural gases surrounding the bog get to you, pushing you into a psychedelic trip. You revisit old memories. The place where you found Zia, a place filled with ashen corpses which you mow down, possibly as a sign of respect and mourning. The place where you found Zulf, a beautiful version of the Bastion that's complete, before finally ending up in the mines. You see, the kid was a Caelondian. He has worked starting as early as a child. Hell, he may still be a child, seeing as he is the kid after all. That's the sort of place Caelondia was. In a side area of the game, accessed through using Zulf's pipe, the narrator reveals more about the kid himself and Caelondia. Besides literal child labor, Caelondia is of course a city built on stolen land. It is an icon of settler colonialism. It operated atop of slave labor. This is the glory of Ceylondia we've been talking about, not the glory of innovation, but that of imperialism. Not one that's built on freedom, but built on blood. By May, something seemed off with my best friend. She started to seem distant. She turned down hangouts more often, and our message rates declined. This did frustrate me quite a bit, as so far I had prioritized this group of friends over anything. I wanted to take up filmmaking classes or German language learning classes, as I'd been looking to go to Europe for college. I decided not to take those classes so that I'd have time to hang out with my new friends. This was a big deal for me, after all. Things were going back to how it was when I was a child. I did join a boxing gym, though. I figured she had her own stuff to deal with, and seeing as her boyfriend is gonna leave town soon, she might not be able to see him for a long time, so I let it be. They've only dated for a little time, and I didn't want to come in between them. After all, I did help to kindle that fire, so to speak. My online friend was also distant now, as their finals were on. I had my other friends, and so I didn't really mind much. Late May came around, and I had grown quite frustrated with my best friend. I'm not a confrontational type person, so I decided to ignore it. We'd meet then and now, and she'd sent an occasional message, but things were very much different from when we first met. She seemed like a totally different person. The both of us joined guitar classes very early on after the finals, and every time I saw her in those sessions, she started to resemble someone I didn't really know. It was as if she was faking a nonchalance that she never really had. I let it be. Early June, my other friends texted me. Their college was starting in a week, which meant that our pretty regular hangouts had to stop indefinitely. I found the news somewhat unsettling because I had applied for a European university whose classes won't start until late September. I had imagined the same for my friends' colleges, which would give us 3 more months together, but I had miscalculated. It's okay, I have my boxing classes, I have my video essays, hell, I still have my best friend. She had gotten accepted by her boyfriend's college and was leaving town in only a few days. This struck me harder than I'd imagined. It's alright, I still have my boxing classes and my video essays. I sprained my ankle during a session, and it turned out that I tore a ligament. 4 weeks of rest and 2 months of complete recovery. I uploaded the video I had been working on for the whole of May. It flopped, 10 out of 10 in YouTube Studio. I met her one more time at our school as they had called for some formalities completing 12th grade. I avoided her the best I could. All my other friends from school were all going to colleges too, and they seemed happy. My old crush was there too. She seemed jolly to see me. She's off to college in a few days too. I felt empty. After that, I found my mind rushing through the memories of us hanging out, the study breaks, playing badminton in the rain, getting completely soaked and catching a fever the next day, roaming around random places we found. These were unpleasant rushes of recollection. It's monsoon season where I live, and it's cold. All day my limbs felt cold as ice, nearing numbness. I couldn't focus on writing, I couldn't watch films. My mind would rush to old memories. After some point, I had bouts of intense emotion. I cried a lot. My parents would call me to wish me good night, and I had to suck up the tears and force a smile. I'd come back to my room and broke down and on the pillow. I didn't know what was causing this, but if this is how my life is gonna be, I don't want it anymore. What did I do wrong? Do I still not deserve any of that which I had, which was now torn away from me? Was I too building back to a person that does not deserve to exist? I figured maybe I could talk to my online friend about all this. Now that his finals are over, maybe he's free. The Calamity was not an unforeseen disaster. It was supposed to be a final blow to the peaceful Ura, a complete victory for the Imperialists. It was made by the Ceylondians, but in the end it backfired. The kid ventures into the Ura's lairs, now armed with a Calamity cannon, a ranged weapon able to deal devastating amounts of damage to both foes and the very foundation of the Ura. All through the game, we've been doing as much destruction as we've been rebuilding. Roll into a wall and it will shatter. Attack buildings and they disappear. Our total destructive power climaxes with us obtaining the battering ram, a heavy but powerful pillar that flattens everything and everyone in its vicinity. The facade of rebuilding a once great civilization is long gone. Is what you are doing even helping what's left? I eventually reached out to my once best friend again. It turned out that the reason she was distant was because I had ignored her at a moment where she was very vulnerable. She had sent me a couple of emotional messages involving her college admissions. She was completely broken by the possibility that she won't get accepted to the university she applied to and would have to spend the next 3 years at home. We both hated our homes. Me, because I feel lonely here, and her because she has her own reasons. I ignored them at the time because I was frustrated by her and I was trying to not care anymore. It was indeed my fault. My frustration, all the feelings of distance building between us was all a selfish urge to belong again. In my blind rush for rebuilding, I had neglected what it really means to have a connection with somebody, what it means to be friends. It's not just being cared for, but to care as well. She wanted to spend more time with her boyfriend because at the time they thought they didn't have much time together. I was too stupid to understand that. My online friend, I guess they too started to feel unsatisfied with me. It was all take, not enough give, I suppose. With the battering ram in hand, I made my way to the Ura. I murdered countless of their warriors, broke down several foundational buildings. In the end, I chased down the warrior carrying the final shard, and I killed him too. With the shard, I turned back, but before me I saw Zulf, this time being beaten by other Ura warriors. I approached him, took out the warriors, and a choice was given to me. Leave the battering ram behind and take Zulf with me or keep it, leaving Zulf where he lays. I chose to take him. As I walked to the closest skyway, tens of Ura warriors surrounded me. They attacked me from every direction. I couldn't retaliate as my weapon was no longer with me. This is the path I've chosen. But as I reached closer to the skyway, the Ura stopped. They won't attack me any longer. One of their leaders even stops another from attacking. They move past to make way for me. I go back to the Bastion with Zulf. There, I was presented with another choice. Restoration. Restore Ceylondia to its former state. This is what Rux has been wanting. Maybe this time they could do better. Maybe this time they could avoid the Calamity and maybe even make peace with the Ura. Or I could choose evacuation. Destroy all cores and shards in a process that transforms the Bastion to a ship that can fly anywhere. Move on. I chose the latter. Ceylondia is rotten to the core. It's not a broken system, it's the system itself that's wrong. There is no going back to that. Only forward. I don't know how my side of the story will continue. As of writing, the last section is the latest update. I had a lot of trouble writing this down because indeed I still hate a lot of myself. I really don't know how to move forward, but if anything, I can say for sure, rebuilding is not what I'm gonna do now. In Hegelian philosophy, we have this concept of the negation of negation. Usually, in conventional logic, a negative of a negative is a return to the positive, but a negation of negation is not a net zero. A negation of negation is a new thing, a newly synthesized shape that is ontologically different from what was before. That's how history works. It does not repeat itself. It's dialectical. It dialectically protrudes to new places. It may rhyme, but it's never a repetition, never a going back. I cannot go back, even if I want to. And I really fucking want to. The past months with my friends have been some of the best days of my life. I've always had to deal with loneliness, something that I quite strongly blame the entire neoliberal vision of society for. But there is a lot of work to be done here, too. Right now, I feel sad and depressed that all my friends are gone. I practically lost two of my best friends. Everyone I know has gone off to college. I feel abandoned. I feel disgusted with myself for what I've done, but still, I think I can move forward.
Listen, all this takes a lot of getting used to. And you do get used to it after a while.
I wrote this entire thing as a means to cope. This is how I understand the world, how I understand myself. It's through art, through media. It's always been through art, whether that be in literally writing or by consuming other pieces of art like Bastion. And I think it's incredible how this entire thing works. I can't begin to wrap my head around how well this random indie game from 2011 was able to console me at what I'd say is my lowest point so far. For a moment, I didn't feel alone anymore because stories from people who felt the same things you have bring us together. I don't believe in a universal that every human experiences. Everyone is different, and change is the only constant. But regardless, I think art has the ability to mediate between what is otherwise disconnected and meaningless experiences. By weaving together my own life and the story of Bastion, I find somewhat of a solace. The Bastion is free to go on a new journey. It's still ambiguous. Things could go wrong. What if I don't make friends in college? Or worse, what if all of this happens again? That doesn't matter. I didn't make this video to spite anybody. I don't feel comfortable in promoting my Patreon here because this really isn't for anybody. It's for me and myself alone. This is the only way I know how to cope. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far. I don't know when I'll upload again. I love making shit. I don't intend to stop until the day I die, but it does get hard, especially when you start to hate the place from where your ideas come from. But regardless, we must move on. As the saying from the Disco Elysium community goes, after the world, the pale. And after the pale, the world again.